I think a lot of issues with money is that there's so much emotional stories wrapped up in it. So I think if we can kind of break that free and just say, it's a real skill.
Yeah.
It's a skill that people need to have as they enter adulthood.
Let's talk Tales. My guest today on Tales with Taylor is a Fortune 100 executive turned adulting coach and founder of Simplified Adulting, a movement helping Gen Z go from adulting stress to adulting success. After decades leading global teams and building learning and development systems for more than 120,000 employees, my guest shifted her focus to what matters most to her, helping 20-somethings find their footing in the world that feels overwhelming, fast-moving, and let's get real, painfully expensive. Through coaching, courses, YouTube content, and community partnership, my guest helps young adults build clarity, capability, and momentum, one simple step at a time. Adulting made simple, confidence made possible. It's Lee Woodward. How are you doing today?
Oh, so good, Taylor. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And, I want to know the tale that truly catapulted you to say, I need to do this. I know you're a mom, so maybe that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think throughout my entire career, I've always navigated towards roles where I get to help solve problems. And I love helping people see their value, no matter what setting. So it's always been something that's been really important to me. And I can take that back to my first job at 14 at the Gap. I really enjoyed, kind of serving people. And so I've always woven that in. This particular endeavor, though, because I've done the big company, I've done small, I've done my own entrepreneurial thing, which in different types of business. But this one is really near and dear to my heart. And it is because I'm a mom. And it's also because I know I really struggled in my 20s. And I think stepping into an adulthood is kind of an existential thing, right? All of a sudden you're like, wait, my life is mine. I get to make all these decisions. And there's just some of those natural challenges that go with that. But for me, I entered adulthood bringing with me from my teen years depression and also eating disorder. So I had a lot of challenges going in and saying, okay, now I'm on my own. How do I make this life? And so I think, I have this experience of having to kind of work hard at figuring that out. And then fast forward thinking, being so committed to that I'm going to have these kids that don't have these challenges. And my kids step into their 20s. And of course, they have the natural challenges that just come with stepping into adulthood. But yeah, this world is so different. So some of that anxiety and stress and the speed. And it was like, wait, my kids are struggling. They're doing great in a lot of ways, but they're not leading the life they want. And I would say even more significantly than I even felt, just because it seemed like the whole world, their world and their peers are kind of feeling the same way of this stress and this anxiety and my daughter used to ask me, why didn't anyone teach me this?
Oh gosh, the number of times I've said that.
Yeah.
I used to think that if I paid, when I was in my 20s, I used to think, if I pay my credit card minimums, that's what I'm supposed to pay.
Yes.
And by having a small balance, I'm helping my credit.
Right.
I was never told anything. And then one day it was my dad being like, wait, you're not paying off your credit card.
Right.
It's like, well, I thought I'm supposed to have a small balance. I thought,
Right. Yeah. And everything from money to, and I thought, oh my gosh, like this is just, there's so much that happened in their world that I'm like, I didn't even know what to teach it to you. I was teaching stuff from my experience.
Right.
And the world has changed so rapidly that as a parent, it was like, wow.
What are some examples of some of those changes that you've noticed that, parents should be more aware of?
Yeah.
To let their kids know?
Well, I think we all aware of that Gen Z was really the first, I'm going to call it the guinea pig generation for handing them phones, social media platforms.
Right.
And all this.
Right.
So,
they've grown up with the internet.
Yeah. And you really think about it. I think back to, my 20s. And what if everything I did was captured in digital form to last forever, and and could be shared by anyone, reacted to by anyone. And so I think any challenge we had about worrying about fitting in, how to kind of manage relationships, all that stuff's been upended and it's on steroids. So I think that whole element and this filtered life view of like somehow everyone else is doing great and I'm the only one feeling this way. And that isolation, I think, gets amped up with social media. So I think that's one challenge. The other one is money. And I think you nailed it. Somehow we quit teaching this stuff. I think as parents, we assumed kind of home ec and finance classes were still going on, and they weren't. And all these new ways to spend money constantly every second you can spend money now. And I think convenience is has been a really detrimental thing. And then to be able just to make those, and because you, of course, recorded my, paycheck to paycheck fix course. And I have this natural zeal about buy now, pay later apps. And I actually became aware of those only fairly recently at the end of 2023 because my son, who was struggling with some things, and one of them being financial issues, we really had to do a dive in. And I'm like, what's Klarna? What's app? Like, what are these things? And he started to explain to me these payment plans that now you have convenience where you can consistently just buy something. And then you have these programs targeted, by the way, at young adults.
Right, the marketing tactics.
Yes, targeted at young adults to say, and now it seems affordable because you can break it up into these. And I had no idea. I'll just give another example. I always try to compare, like, if I wanted to do that, the version of that for me was, putting something on layaway.
Yeah.
You'd have to walk to the store, get to the store, put it, there was effort.
I remember doing that with my mom all the time.
And there's no effort. Plus, you get that thing right then and there now. So you're kind of.
Versus having to eventually take it home one day.
Right. And kind of get that immediate gratification. And also like payday loans. I can remember one time in high school going to a payday loan check center and bringing my check because then you got a check and you had to wait a few days for it to be good potentially. And it was like, this is kind of a scary place. Well, now they're apps. And you just give them
the convenience.
The convenience, and they are tapped into their bank accounts. They've got account numbers, routing numbers, and when their payment is due, it comes out. So this stuff was just shocking to me. And
it's like a legal mob.
Yeah. And I was just like, wait, what else is going on here? So just started to really ask those questions and say like, wow, I missed this. I missed some of these seismic changes that were impacting not only my kids, but when I talked to their friends going, oh my gosh, this is just really a challenge.
And you mentioned the paycheck to paycheck course, which is just, such a phenomenal way to think about your money and truly plan. I know I've always been intimidated by budgeting, at Excel, but you make it so simple with, forms to simply follow. And so tell me more about that particular course and, who is that course really good for?
Yeah. And I came up with that course first because of the young people that I've surveyed, the ones that are in my life. It's about money. And it's about not really understanding the basics and not really knowing how to take the action. They're smart. They know that they should have an emergency fund. They know that they should have something in savings, but
knowing and actually
doing it, there's two different things. And how do you get there, especially if you're in this cycle of credit cards, buy now, pay later apps, maybe a payday loan in there that's ripping money. I mean, it's cash flow chaos for this generation.
And honestly, all those automatic payments, for me too, I sometimes that mortgage can get taken out, all these automatic payments versus the old school. I still kind of miss just writing a check. Because then and you're doing the math and you feel it more versus it just gone.
It's all digital. It's all air. And so the course is really meant for the people that are living paycheck to paycheck. And whether could be because the amount you're earning compared to what you're spending. You know, there's just a gap. Sometimes people on paper make enough money, but they're still living paycheck to paycheck, because you can make a lot of money and still live paycheck to paycheck, because it's about a mindset and approach and having a system for breaking it down and just saying, okay, I'm going to start by not figuring out how I get an emergency fund. How do I get out of this payroll window, meeting my commitments, understanding what the next one is, and then problem solving if I've got some gaps. And I mean, that's really, I think, a simplified adulting way, is really just trying to break it down into simple steps, because you get to build some momentum that way. And I think it's easy to get focused on that big, huge goal. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't know how to get there. So you feel like a failure, you feel frustrated, and you just keep pretending that it'll eventually be okay. And so the course is really for, you know, anyone, but particularly, you know, Gen Z, kind of in that 20-something age, where you're just kind of saying, how do I get out of this cycle? How do I become clear on what's going on? And how do I make some decisions that get me to feeling more financially secure?
And so if someone was going to take one action step, what would be the one thing you would suggest for someone to do?
Yeah, I think it is getting real, being willing to face reality, even though it feels scary. And I can guarantee you that when you face reality, it's never as scary as what goes on. I mean, still now. I mean, you know, when we have something in our
mind can,
that head
so
monster,
hard.
right? It really can make it. And you're like, okay, now I'm going to deal with it. So I think it's about getting the numbers down and willing to really be honest and real about your given situation. And one of the best ways to do that, and there's resistance to this, but it's so empowering once you do, is there's an element of a great, sometimes, not always, but a great predictor of future performance behavior is what we did past. What I did yesterday, good chance I'm going to do some of those things tomorrow. So
habits are hard to break.
Yep. Taking 30, 45 days worth of your spend. So just looking at credit card statements, bank statements, and really just grouping it and saying, where did I spend my money? And being willing to say, wow, I didn't realize that I used DoorDash for $110 worth of delivery fees. Wow, I don't even remember making that purchase. And I think that when you do that, you start to get a clarity of where some of your opportunity spaces are. So I think it's really about being willing to be brave and say, I'm going to look at reality here.
You know, in business, we're always told, you need to know your numbers. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your numbers. We're told that all the time. If you get any business coach or anything, that's like one of the first things they do, you know your numbers. But really, it's not just for business owners. It's for anybody living life. You kind of need to know your numbers. How much is your mortgage? How much is your car insurance? And it's different for everyone.
Well, and I think having a money mindset that, that about knowing your numbers, I think one of the most important relationships we have in life is with money. And I think, we have this conversation in business all the time too. Like, what do we price at? What am I worth? And we know a lot of times that those personal issues, those personal stories can kind of flow into our business decisions. And to me, it's about really understanding your beliefs about money, what your relationship with is. Is it healthy? Is it toxic? Did you grow up in a household where you're like, don't talk about it? Is there shame attached with money? Those are all things that are real. And we live in a world where money matters. And money isn't everything, but it's a really important thing.
It's an important tool.
It's an important tool. And I think sometimes we also have this, money doesn't matter. Follow your passion. It's great advice, I think, for the people that have money. And have their financial situation healthy, right? It gives you opportunity to kind of play with that idea a little bit more. But I don't think that's extremely helpful to this generation that's living in probably the most expensive time we've had. Rents, housing is ridiculous. The
Health
idea of owning
insurance.
a home is a dream. So they're getting all these messages of here's what your life's supposed to look like.
Mhm.
But, don't care about money. You don't have to think that much about money.
Yeah.
And so I really do believe it's one of the most important relationships in our life because it matters.
And the idea of like keeping up with the Joneses, that's a phrase that's been around for
Yep.
decades. But I think now also with social media,
Yep.
it's harder to deny that you want to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Because you'll see the people on the beach. You'll see the people in Europe. You'll see the people with the cool new
Yeah.
purse or something. And, it's hard to not get a little envious and say, I want that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and going back to that convenience and that we've developed these systems of engaging with the world that are just constant dopamine hits for us, right? So you see those things and they're configured in such a way, personalized for you,
Right.
thanks to algorithms, right? That it really makes it like, and I want that now,
And then it
and
says
I want that
buy
now. And it makes it easy. And I can split it into 4 payments instead. So there's really a ecosystem working against financial wellness,
Yeah.
I would say, for this generation.
And so, obviously you decided, okay, I am going to be the one to educate and empower. And so
Yeah.
you came up with simplified adulting.
Yep.
Tell me what made you choose your color schemes.
Yeah. And I should say that my 2 20-something kids are in this with me. So I talked to them about the idea and said, but I need you guys. I need you guys to give me a perspective.
Yeah.
You need to be part of this because I can bring in my perspective, but I need to make sure that there's a blending here. So they've been really important in this, including part of the colors in the logo. We wanted really bright, solid but powerful colors. I mean, those are really like, we're all in, and we are all outdoors people. We take a lot of joy out of beauty of the natural world. So we liked the idea of kind of bringing that in. Some of the most amazing times we've had have either been climbing the canyon, hiking, camping. We did a lot of camping when they were little. So that definitely that outdoor is a source of energy and calm for us. And then that life's a journey.
Yeah.
It's about the journey, not the destination. That sounds cliche, but it really is true. So, and I just think it's a really hopeful. It's a hopeful.
It's so fun. Like it
Yeah.
just feels bright. It does
Yeah.
feel welcoming. It's
Yeah.
nothing that's too corporate looking
Yeah.
or too scary.
Yeah.
Psychologically too. Blue's very trusting.
Yep.
Orange tends to be more consumer.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's this trusting,
Yeah.
authority, but very,
Yep.
welcoming with the consumer. And then green for growth. Like,
Yeah.
I think it works really well
Yeah.
psychologically,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, we
I always
really
just like
like
to
it.
know the ideas behind the
Yeah.
brand and everything.
Yeah. So we kind of started out, and it's evolved because we kind of started out with just some simple initials, not my strong suit, doing graphic design and whatnot. And then when we kind of said, no, we need something different, that's what we've just kind of, and also help from your team,
Yeah.
help refine that. We had the idea.
It was with your vision, though.
I
so
know.
yes.
You just doing those little tweaks that you did really
Yeah.
made a difference to make exactly what we wanted to express pop even more. So
Yes, well,
Yeah.
awesome. That's what, teamwork. It's all
Yep,
about teamwork
yep,
and business.
absolutely.
And so, and teamwork too when it comes to life. Like, I think, again, I feel like a lot of things we learn in business, like know your numbers, delegate, find team members that are your weaknesses, that are their strengths.
Yeah.
A lot of these, like, business tactic and ideas just need to be taught to everyday
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Because if you're not good at finances, that's okay.
Right.
Hire an accountant, hire,
Yeah.
someone that you can trust to help break down the math for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times too, we have friends and people in our lives that are good at things. So and I like to call them accountability partners, finding those accountability partners where, you can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And so even in the paycheck to paycheck course, talk about that, find someone that you can do this with,
Right.
that you can be honest and open about, and that can help challenge you, or maybe they do have a stronger skill set in kind of looking at the numbers, and maybe can be the part that comes in that sets up kind of a plan because you're organized, right? And you do the check-ins. But yeah, I think I love business. I've always loved business. And I think it is. It's just life.
Mhm.
And it's we're people. So people are business.
Exactly.
So I think that teamwork, and I think that's another thing that we really hear that Gen Z struggles with is the isolation and the feeling of isolation. I mean, I know my daughter, celebrating her graduation from ASU, sitting on the couch in the middle of the pandemic, and
that's so hard. I know they had to go through. My heart just weeps for those seniors that didn't get their last game or that didn't get that last performance or whatever it may be. Like that's tough. And then being on your couch for graduation.
And I remember she had a job. She was working from her bedroom, taking classes from her bedroom. So it was just, it was a lot of that isolation. And I think that that's another area where we as mentors can help kind of bring those opportunities for face-to-face interactions or supporting, because it's easy for us to assume, you hear some things, the Gen Z stare, this or that. But we, again, fundamentally such a different experience in terms of how they communicate and the tools that were available to support communication, especially during the pandemic. So it's one of those areas for me personally, it was easy to kind of be like, what are you doing? Why are you on dating apps? You're 20, you're 20. I just didn't understand, because that's
it's just a disconnect.
Right. And so it's kind of learning to step away and say, okay, I'm not going to be judgmental. I didn't live that experience, but how can some of my lived experience and perspective maybe help open up an opportunity for them to have a different lived experience and create a new perspective.
It's interesting how you say like the Gen Z stare and things. I remember, being a millennial, I just remember when I started in the workforce, it was like, oh, millennials don't want to work for anybody. Or, I just feel like there was so much negativity. And now it's like, oh, they're resilient. They know how to, and so it's the same thing where I feel like give it, a few more years, once the alpha generation comes through, we're going to think Gen Zs are just like amazing. Like there's, it's just interesting how those ebb and flows always go.
I know. Well, and that was a big learning for me, personally, because I think as a Gen X, if we're kind of talking the generations, it was, oh, you don't say no. Like you work hard, you do it, you work the hours, you do that, and then eventually the payoff will come, right? And so I heard my kids and their friends articulating boundaries in their 20s about their work life that I'm just so impressed by.
Yeah.
And it's not about laziness or lack of ambition. It's about, I didn't have that vocabulary in my 20s. And I probably didn't get it until my late 40s, where I was like, what am I, wait, I can have boundaries. I don't, this doesn't have to absorb my life. And so I'm really impressed with, and especially my kids, I hear them saying, well, I told them I wasn't going to do that project unless A, B, and C.
That's awesome to have that confidence.
Right. And to be able to, and by the way, A, B, and C made a lot of sense. And just kind of being really realistic about, I don't want a job that I work 80 hours a week. I'd be like something to myself, no, you just do the project. No, you just work the hours. And I thought, no, this is really impressive. And so, but I think unfortunately, to your point, that often gets misconstrued or interpreted as not ambitious or that they're lazy. And that's not been my experience at all.
Right.
It's something that I never had the language for at that age. And I'm really impressed by it.
Yeah. No, I was definitely raised in you find a job, you work there, you get the pension, you stay loyal.
Right.
But then again, I branched off at 24 to do my own business. And so, no, it's interesting. Yeah. And so as someone who has started several businesses, the majority of the audience are fellow business owners. Yeah. What are some of those tips to getting started? Because there's really similar to adulting. Yeah. There's a lot of nuances that you're not told about right away when you're starting a business.
Yeah. I continue just to learn so much. And it's funny because I think back to some of my other businesses and I'll still go back and, go say, well, I just learned this. How would that made a difference then? Just to kind of, roll it forward and take those lessons and have them continue to help me learn. So I think the first thing is just to really have clarity about what you're doing and why you want to do it, because and revisit that, because it's so easy to get pulled off task. And I found that when I wasn't really anchored in what I was doing, I let a lot of influences kind of go, oh yeah, that does sound good.
Yeah,
There's
shiny
a-
objects.
yeah, there's shiny things. And so I think it's just really making sure to have that clarity has been really helpful for me. And I must say with this, I'm the most clear as I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that also, I'm learning comes a patience. There's such a desire to fill the time with stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just got some great advice, actually. It's like, oh, this is amazing. And it was a bunch of entrepreneurs, and we were talking about, our to-do list and how do you get it all done? And the person leading the group kind of said, well, if you really roll that up to the big goal of what you want to do. So if I can say to myself that my big goal is to fundamentally help, Gen Z feel successful and feel less overwhelmed and have them feel more confident and feel like, yeah, I've got this. And he said, if you roll that up, think of how much on your to-do list just disappears, because it really isn't tied to that. So I think we get mired down all these actions, but I think sometimes we're addicted to busy work or filling it.
It fills our ego to be like, oh, I did that. I took out that trash.
So I think just going back and saying it's because there's always a million things you could choose to do. You need to figure out the 3 you need to do.
Mm. And then maybe consider delegation is the other thing. Is it, one of my clients, she always talks about staying in your center of genius.
Yeah.
Vanessa Shaw. She always talks about, stay in your center of genius. If it's something that is not uniquely something you do,
right,
perhaps you are not the one to do it. And it's about finding those team members, or whether it's, someone inside of your organization or even outside. I have a lot of fellow business owners whom are the web designers on my team who are, and so it's just about, what is it that is your goal, your why, and then, what is it that makes you uniquely important towards that goal.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is having those couple people in your world that will help you keep it real.
Yes.
And being, I've been every Monday, 2 women, 2 other entrepreneurs. We talk once a week. We were actually in a business mastermind group. Oh my gosh, it's probably 8 years ago. And we then just continued that relationship.
That's awesome.
Because we need to have that place where we can say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm not sure, this, that. And then also have them say, BS. This is, you're making this problem. This isn't a real problem. Or, telling some of the hard truth, things along those lines. And so to just be able to have those couple people that you can really rely on to be your cheerleader, but also
a realistic cheerleader.
Yeah.
We don't need a bunch of yes men saying all the right things and everything is great. No. Yeah. I think it was Brene Brown who said, being clear is kind.
Yes.
And so it's just being clear is kind.
Yes.
Trying to sugarcoat things or make it sound sweeter, that's not helping them in the long run.
Right. We all have moments where I'll say to them, like, I'm feeling down. I just need you to like give me give me the speech, give me rant, and that's okay. But we have to know, like, I need that. That's what I need right now. Not when I need real talk. I can't have you giving me the pep talk, the speech.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I know through business, I've read so many books, heard so many tales that I can then, reflect on and use to help me. What's one of your favorite tales that you've heard? And it can be about business, work, and just be in general.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I really like, it's kind of going that zone of genius, but in a different way. I've really gotten into figuring out how to focus. I think we're really in an attention deficit area, and I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah, well, our phones are pinging nonstop and inundation of so many things. I've tried to unfollow various news segments, and I feel like I'm still getting bombarded by Forbes or Times or this and that. And
And so I've found, and I like Cal Newton, I believe his name. He does Slow Productivity and a couple other books. And it's really just about how to set yourself up for when the time that you're going to really work on the business, not in the business, but on the business, how to really slow that down and be super productive and impactful. The other thing I probably listen to more than, I love the podcast, How I Built This, because I think the thing that I love the most about it is that you get the sense that a lot of these successful brands or companies were kind of, in 2 years. No,
Right.
These people toiled for years.
Yeah.
A lot of it in obscurity and, and trying to figure out how to make the rent. And so it's just those same things learned over and over. Like it's just about commitment and just one step every day. Keep it going. And so I always find that that's when I hear those stories, it's easy to go like, it's not, if it's hard, it's not right. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Most good things in life have an element of hard to them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you just choose your hard.
Yep,
And that's the
you
other
choose
thing,
it.
too. You choose
Yeah.
your hard. And, that reminds me also, I believe it was a James Clear newsletter that said passion and persistence beats talent.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can be talented at something,
Yep.
but if you're not passionate about it or you're not going to be persistent about it, it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
Because then once it gets hard, you're just going to stop. But if you have a passion for it and you're going to be persistent, it's kind of like I think about Tom Brady. Tom Brady, 7th round draft pick. He was just a scrub of a kid when he came out of his rookie year. Did not look like, a starting quarterback, but now is the most decorated quarterback out there because he had passion and persistence. He went in, first one in, last one out, working hard. And so whether it's, football or starting a business, it's, you don't need to be the most, naturally talented at XYZ. You just need to have the most passion and be willing to be persistent at it.
Yeah. I vary slightly from that. I like purpose plus practice. And passion for me, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Sometimes I think it's, is this very, got to feel so passionate about things. And what I find is purpose is more, I anchor to purpose. Like, what's my purpose? And I said earlier, like, my purpose, I really think is to help people see and feel and experience their value. And problem solving. And it could be really stupid problems, but I'm really good at problem solving. And that's my purpose. And I find then when I lean into that, I experience passion.
I do kind of like that.
Yeah.
There's some truth to that, I feel.
Yeah.
We have joked that, although, we're financial promotion and video marketing, I've been really adding the video marketing solutions.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're really solution oriented. Yeah. There's so many times when people come to us for, XYZ need that maybe we haven't quite done before, but it's like, let's find a solution for this. And that does feel fun. And then that does give me my passion to be like, let's help people. Let's get to their solution. Yeah. And so, I do like that idea. It's more purpose. Yeah. But I guess also when I think about it, like when I think about like my purpose here on earth, like I really lean on, being a mom, and maybe that's just because I have a 6 and a 3-year-old at home. And so I'm really like deep into it right now. Yeah. But definitely, being a mom is like when I'm being a mom is like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This feels right.
Yeah. Well, and I think like with my kids, the things that I like to be for them is I always have wanted to be the person to help them see their value, be anchored in that. And, I hope that someday they can say, my mom made me feel like I was valuable and I was worthy and helped me understand what my gifts are. And, and I think that feeds into kind of that purpose for me. Like that's the type of mom I want to be. And I want to help them solve their problems. Right. Not solve them for them. No. Very tempting sometimes, but want to help that. Yes. And so, I think it's all, but I find when I bring those things to any role in my life, I'm a lot happier.
And so as moms and as I'm sure other parents are watching, when is the appropriate time to have money talks, to talk money? Because as you mentioned, in some households, it's like, money, religion, politics, just don't talk about it. But instead, we should talk about money because it has to do with running our lives in a thriving way. And so at what point do you think it's appropriate to really start talking to your kids about money?
I mean, for me, I think, and I go back to when I started to really learn about money was probably in my 11, 12, 13, because I started to get little side jobs. And my stepdad was really good at saying, okay, so you're going to put half of it in savings and half of it, then you can do what you want with it. And we talked about why we did that. And that money was truly mine. They got me a very small, I lived in Minnesota, so Dayton Hudson credit card with
never heard
like
of that place.
they used to own Target.
Oh,
but and here's a $200 limit to and I learned very quickly, it's easy to charge that. It's hard to pay it down. So we got little safe lessons, and you can do things, and I would really encourage people. I learned this recently from a YouTube interview we did on credit scores. And I spoke with Margot Rockus, who's a banker, and she really did a great job explaining this. But come into your bank, like, we want to help have these conversations with families. And I was like, and so she had some really great suggestions, like, doing that joint credit card so that they can learn the pain of it in a safe way, but understand, like, oh my gosh, this gets out of control, can get out of hand fast. Having those types of building up a savings, start that habit. What does it mean? Whether you're making money because you went and mowed lawns, how do you go through that money and really, understand what you do with it? How do you make decisions about it? I think, very early, because these kids are seeing gamification and kind of spending. Now, it may be jewels they win or something they get in the games.
Robux.
But there's lots of stuff out there. So, I think very early you can start to have those conversations and being able to practice it in small, safe ways so that as they leave, the nest, so to speak, they have a foundation of skills. And then keep on top of what's happening with all the financial tools out there.
Yeah. So maybe 6 was a little early for my son, but he started a lemonade stand. And so I actually had him do a P&L sheet. I was like, okay, we had to buy cups. We had to do this. And then, of course, our wonderful neighbors kind of ruined it when they're like, here's 500 free cups.
Right.
I was trying to have him do P&L.
No, I think that's great. And I think it's like my mom always taught me, because I asked her, like, how did you know when to talk to me about things when I was going to be having my kids? Like, and she said, you know what? A lot of it is based on what you were interested in, and when you asked questions and we'd start to talk, and then I knew I was giving too much information when you started to glance over, like you just wasn't, so we stopped. Yeah. And then maybe 3 months later you would ask the question that was what, that
where we left
was
off.
Step too far for me at the time. And so I love that. I think a lot of issues with money is that there's so much emotional stories wrapped up in it. So I think if we can kind of break that free and just say, it's a real skill. Yeah. It's a skill that people need to have as they enter adulthood.
Well, I know he can't wait for his product to be available again. Our trees have yet to fully ripen with more lemons. And so he's like, come on, trees. I need more product to work with here.
Well, I will say, too, so all that savings from those little part-time jobs, when I was 20, I ended up having this really nice, little nest egg. And I was like, should I get a car? Should I do that? And I was like, you know what? And so I went and backpacked around Europe for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And what a great lesson.
But you could.
And what I also did was I lived on about $8 a day there. So I knew how to, but I had that all down. Okay, well, here's the money I have. What do I want to do? If I want to stay there 3 months, then so all that was built in. So I was really fortunate to have my stepdad who really, took it upon himself to teach those lessons.
Yeah, it is tough. And I'm sure maybe that 11, 12 would be better. Because I know when I try to convince him, like, hey, okay, you made $100. Why don't we put 50 in the bank? And it just feels like I'm taking money away. Right. So I had to physically have him come to my office. I'm like, look, I'm going to transfer into your account. How much is in your account now? It's still there. But for kids, I think it sometimes feels like you're taking my money away. But it's the education of it's going elsewhere.
Well, and also, we get to make decisions for, as long as that's the game rule, you have a lemonade stand and 50% of what you make is going to go in savings and 50% you get to go to the toy store
Oh,
or
just
wherever you
gamble
go,
at
the
the arcade
store,
for
you know, Legos or whatever. And then I think that's it. It's just having those rules and then saying, oh, okay, that's fair.
Yeah. No, I hope he gets into the habit of it because he definitely likes the arcade. He's
Yeah.
already a very big kid gambler when it comes to the arcade. And he always does all the ones with the tickets too for some reason. I'm like, you could go to Target and like buy that little guitar for a lot less than what those tickets are. But I think it's the thrill of it all.
Yeah. Skee ball tickets. That's what
Oh,
I mean.
yes. The skee ball's fun though.
Yeah.
No, the arcade can be fun, but yeah. So, okay. So, 6, maybe a little young,
yeah.
but it was him. It was truly him that said,
Yeah.
I want to sell lemonade. We have lemons. We don't drink enough lemonade at home. Let's sell some of it.
Yeah.
And luckily we have prime real estate. We're like right in the corner of a neighborhood. So
When he's on Shark Tank by 12, you'll be happy.
yes. Oh, most definitely. Yes. And so now if you were to write a book, what would be the title of that tale?
I actually am writing a book, and now I'm
question.
declaring it. So this is a big first time I'm saying it. And I actually started it about the other business that I had that you helped me with called Women in Disguise. And it is really a story about me kind of coming into adulthood and having some of that baggage, the depression, the eating disorders, and kind of this distorted view of my beauty. And it was really that what I call my pink wig experience, which was I tried on a pink wig at a party just by chance. I was at that point, I was an executive. I was working horrendous hours. I lived on a plane basically.
That's tough.
And it was just really tough. It was a hard, tough grind of a job, and it was just not much fun in my professional life at that time. And so I went to this party, didn't want to go because I'm tired, and I saw this pink prop wig in the corner, and I tried it on. I thought, what the heck? I am tired. I'm just gonna go put that thing on.
Right.
And it was like transformed. As I say, I was no longer walking around the party. I was sashaying because I was just immediately transformed. And it was the first time where I realized I couldn't figure out what was it about that night. It just wouldn't leave me, the feeling inside. And I realized it was the first time that I could ever remember feeling beautiful. Oh. And it was and I was like, I want more of that. Like, I want to figure this out. So that was really a monumental shift for me. I mean, I left my successful aerospace career to start a wig business.
So that was the moment
that was the moment. I said, I have to figure this out. And it was one of the most rewarding businesses I could have ever done, just being able to help women look in the mirror and just, even sometimes only for a moment, have a recognition of
Wow. So that was the moment that catapulted. Because my next question was going to be, what was the tale that made you choose to leave corporate and go into entrepreneurship? Because being an entrepreneur and business owner isn't all that easy.
No, it isn't. And, people kind of looked at me where I was at in my career. My success level had a lot of women kind of coming to say, how can you do this? Like, you've made it. Like, we need you there. And that was really hard for me. I think that was the hardest part of the decision. But it was like, no, I need to go do this. This is kind of my journey, and I feel like I can do it as a business. I mean, life and business, I think, when they're paired like this, is just a great thing. So it was really an opportunity for me to say, I got to go figure this out. And so that's the book. And it's just kind of about this transformation. And I just believe that all of us, men, women alike, but I think in particular for women, there's an incredible power in recognizing our beauty.
Yeah.
And, having that be just an intrinsic part of us.
Well, you are beautiful.
Oh, well,
so if you haven't heard that recently, you know that you are beautiful inside and out.
But,
and so what's the title going to be? Finding Your Pink Wig? Or what are we feeling here?
I'm feeling something like...
We won't hold it to you.
Yeah. Unfiltered beauty.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, in a world of filters.
Yeah. A woman rediscovering her beauty. And I think...
Nice.
And again, we're going to talk about this thing on steroids. And when you think about, body image, images of perfection, for me, I had to work pretty hard in high school and college. I remember I would rip out the magazine pictures and put them on my, of whoever the supermodels were. But man, you just have this constant flow of images. And you also have this constant ability to put this filter on them, have this look, have that.
And now with AI, like it's a whole other level. Like I feel like it was bad with Photoshop.
Yeah.
And now it's, oh, here's a picture of me.
Yeah.
Now make me look 20 years younger and with some, professional makeup and a nice dress, and AI just does it up.
So I can't even imagine the pressure that has gone with that. I mean, and so I think, and I do a lot. So I really only am on TikTok and YouTube is where I have, and I do a lot of my TikTok early morning on the trail. No, because I think it's important for me to, I think I look like me, whether I have makeup on, no makeup on, like I'm me.
Yeah.
That's where, and that's just a really great place for me to be. And I wish everyone could, and not that I don't have these moments like, but for the most of all, it's like I can get back to me pretty soundly. And so it's important for me to like be able to go on TikTok and say, it's okay. We look like what we look like. And, so sometimes it's like, yep, that's me. I looked at a video from the other morning. I was like, oh, wow, that's it. But that was the unfiltered beauty of me walking on the trails, just sharing.
Gosh, power to you watching them though. Like I'm fine with how I look, but I don't watch any of my videos. Like all this, I don't watch this.
Yeah.
So that's part where I'm like, I'm more than happy to be out and about with people, but I'm not gonna watch my stuff.
Well, you should, because you're very good on it.
Well, thank you. But it does remind me of I remember watching in high school, they showed us a documentary, Killing Us Softly.
Yeah.
And it was about like Photoshop and the world of, how women that we see on the magazines aren't truly what they look like in person. Sounds like they need to reboot that, or maybe I need to reboot that with talking about AI and the filters, because I think it's just getting so much worse.
Yeah, it's worse. I mean, and there's a lot of data out there, specifically about Instagram, just because the age group it's targeting to, but being tied to disordered eating and those types of complexes. And it's it's a scary world out there for when you're just kind of thrust into this world of tech. And again, speaking of Brene Brown, she said a wonderful thing. I was listening to her on a podcast, and it was during COVID, and she made this comment about her daughter was upset about not being able to play a soccer game, and she wanted to say to her, like, come on, get your priorities straight. The world's in a pain. Like, look what's happening. And she said, but then I had to stop myself, because that's my 50-year perspective, talking to a 10-year-old perspective.
Or her world.
Yeah, and perspective comes with experience. And so we can share our perspective, but we can't, at some point you need that experience, so I think, that sometimes we have these, for me to go on social media and kind of get those images, I have a different experience and perspective than 15-year-old girl going on, or
and that 10-year-old, like, soccer was her world.
Yeah, that was
and
her
that's
world,
something that we need to really put ourselves in those perspectives of, like, wait, for a 10-year-old, this is her world. She's not worried about the neighbor or the rest of the state or the rest of the country. It's just about her friends, her little circle. And so it's really important to think that. I know I had a guest on, Kenyatta Turner, and we talked about like the golden rule, and she's like, no, the golden rule is flawed. We shouldn't treat people the way we want to be treated, because we have different experiences. We should treat people the way that they want to be treated. And so I do think, even as parents, sometimes we feel like we know so much because we've experienced so much. But like you said, our experiences aren't theirs. I remember dial-up. I didn't have a Facebook in middle school, thank goodness gracious. Like, I didn't have those things. And like, our kids are going to be having.
Yeah, and it's such a different world. And I thought I did a pretty decent job keeping up. And then when I kind of stumbled, I was like, wow, I really didn't. No, and it's just it's the pace of change. It's the pace of change. And so I think helping young adults, younger people learn that there are ways to step outside of that and engage differently is something of value that we could bring.
Yeah.
Because we also know, I mean, like when what we see is what we see, we don't necessarily know that there's an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember hearing this great research on kind of all those information about why some girls, you know, girls doing well in STEM and boys and all this. And there was a great study, I can't tell you what it was, but it broke it down and said what they realized is that when you averaged everything, it looked like this huge mass disparity. But when you looked at the data a lot more granular, you realize that there were specific areas where girls were exceeding in STEM at some point, or easily keeping par, both in numbers and performance.
Right.
And what they broke that down to was they started to look at those areas, and they, of course, you know, took out the differences that could be economic, parent, double parent, whatever. And what they came to it was the girls that experienced other women who were in STEM fields. And by the way, didn't have to be bring your daughter to work day.
No.
It could have been their best friend's mom who was holding the birthday party and just knew she was an engineer. That little glimpse of that, you know, made it possible for those girls to say, oh, well,
I can do it.
I can do that too. So I think sometimes that we think it takes a lot more like exposure, influencer. And sometimes I think the littlest thing can spark in somebody like, oh, there's a different way to do that.
It's about representation, seeing, you know, yourself or seeing yourself there. And, you know, it's actually funny that you use that example and mention that. I'm actually starting to work with a nonprofit called Hands on Heroes, which is all about giving kids and, you know, definitely, you know, young girls just knowledge and exposure to STEM and engineering construction opportunities.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so we're doing a whole series with them. They have a podcast launch. So yeah, definitely take a look at that.
Well, and the trades are great. My son decided 4-year college wasn't for him, and he went into trades.
Power to him.
Yeah.
Be comfortable with that, because I feel like that's another, you know, misconception that we're told. You gotta go to a 4-year college. You gotta get a bachelor's degree or better, or blah, blah, blah. You know, that's not the case.
Well, and you think about Gen Z is really, they're bearing the burden of so much of this, where we're now learning that's not the case. Or like, please don't spend $200,000 on an English lit degree.
Oh,
right.
Right. No,
like, right. Like, let's not
ancient
do that.
medieval history.
Right. Right. Like, it has to be this ROI. Business mentality, right?
Yes.
Business mentality. And so we're starting to open that aperture up about what's possible. Now, these kids have student debt on top of everything else, but then these degrees and they're reaching a point where it's like, wait, it's not getting me the salary so that ROI is, they were told was going to be there, and it's not necessarily bearing out. But yeah, he did the trades, and he's really enjoyed it, and he went into auto service technician stuff. Yeah, and I know we talk a lot about girls, but I have a son and a daughter, so I've always, of course, like the best for both.
And I got one of each flavor too.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing in a lot of the literature now about the state of boys, you know, our young men are really struggling too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I think there's this, it's that the purpose and kind of their role and all this stuff. So it's a confusing time on both sides, and so maybe for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I've just started reading some of Scott Galloway's stuff, and he's got some really interesting takes on kind of like, hey, our young men are hurting, like they just not sure where they fit in.
Right.
And so we have work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, one of my other clients, Dr. Gilda Carl, wrote a whole book on that with loads of research on just the confusion that men are going through. They just don't know how to navigate anymore. So
so a huge opportunity for us in the generation before to kind of help. And two, because there's millennial and Gen X.
Yeah, but I think it first starts with actually taking a step back and really thinking about the world that they're growing up in.
Right.
And not think about our own perspectives. And then from there, we can maybe use some of our experience and knowledge to provide guidance, but not necessarily like must-do steps. You know?
Yeah. I heard somebody say, I can't remember who this was, but they were talking about helping younger people, but we want to go in. It was a podcast, and you want to We want to solve the problem for them. And I think perhaps our generation did that a little bit too much. I think we were kind of the first helicopter parents. And, you know, said that, and she put it in a way, she said, how dare you take that success from them to solve the problem for them? And so that's always really resonated with me. Like, no, it's helping to build problem-solving skills and capability and kind of thought process and a framework. But man, that feels good when we solve a problem.
But we got to help them do it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, it feels so good when I solve a problem. I wouldn't want someone to take that away from me, right? Yeah.
And that's where Simplify Adulting can help you in solving your own problems with really easy to follow practical tools and advice. And so as we're coming to a close here, how can people get connected with you deeper? We're going to have links all in the show notes, but I always like to verbally share, you know, what is the one step you want people to take? Yeah,
I would love everyone to go out to simplifyadulting.com. We have an amazing resource hub with some just great zero-cost resources. Of course, we mentioned the course, the Paycheck to Paycheck Fix course, which is awesome. It's just really doable. And by the way, big focus, no judgment. We are where we are, and we go from there. I mean, that's just kind of the starting point. And so, but yeah, would love that. Would love to have people take advantage of those resources. And if you're I call it a mentor, a parent, a grandparent, you have 20-somethings in your life, please come out and check it out, because the gift my kids give me in this is, you missed the mark, Mom. Like, that's not what we're worried about. Or no, that tone that doesn't speak to us. And so they really help try to make sure so everything that's put out there is reviewed by them, and usually is because of them saying, this is what we're struggling with, this is what's going on, here's how we need help.
Definitely. So both parents, grab your kiddos, kiddos, grab your parents together. You know, you can learn really great tools in order to just simplify adulting. So thank you so much, Lee, for joining me today. This was such a pleasure, and I hope that so many people look you up, because you are a wealth of information and just a wonderful person.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for making this opportunity possible.
Yes, thank you, and go ahead and simplify your life. Thank you for watching Tales with Taylor. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Financial Potion YouTube channel to never miss an episode.